Lieutenant Jack Morrison stared at the ceiling of his quarters on Harmony Point Space Station, counting the subtle hexagonal patterns for the third time that morning. The station's architects had apparently believed that mimicking a beehive would somehow make the diverse species feel more at home. It didn't, especially not for the only human in the station's elite peacekeeping unit. "Lieutenant Morrison, your presence is required in briefing room 6 in 15 standard minutes," announced the station's AI in that perpetually cheerful voice that made Jack want to reprogram it with a baseball bat. Yeah, I'm up," Jack muttered, rolling out of his specially designed human bed. Most of the sleeping arrangements on Harmony Point involved either suspension fields, nutrient baths, or in the case of the Exolarian delegation, what appeared to be carefully arranged piles of gravel. Jack pulled on his uniform, a sleek, midnight blue affair with the insignia of the Intergalactic Peacekeeping Force prominently displayed. The IPF had been formed after the Third Galactic Conflict, when everyone collectively agreed that maybe, just maybe, attempting to exterminate each other wasn't the best use of resources. Humanity had been a late addition to the Alliance, joining only after proving they weren't going to immediately try to colonize everything that moved. As Jack made his way through the station's curved corridors, he nodded to the various beings he passed. A pair of Turalian engineers with their 4 arms each juggling tools. A floating mist person from Nebula 6 who communicated through subtle color changes. The station was a marvel of cooperation, home to over 300 species, all working together in what the promotional materials called perfect harmony. The reality was more like barely contained chaos, but it worked mostly. The door to briefing room 6 slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the rest of Jack's unit was already assembled. The human arrives. Only 3 minutes early instead of 5. "Are you feeling unwell, Morrison?" Commander Adziv's voice was like gravel in a blender. The draconian commander stood over 7 feet tall, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from emerald to sapphire depending on the light. His species evolved from apex predators, and it showed in everything from his retractable claws to his unsettling habit of never blinking. "Just pacing myself, Commander," Jack replied with the easy smile that had gotten him both into and out of trouble throughout his career. "Humans and their inefficient time management," muttered Technician Plex, a Kwani whose 6 tentacles were currently manipulating a holographic display. The Kwani were renowned for their technological prowess and their absolute inability to understand the concept of relaxation. Plex had once described Jack's weekend hobby of painting as deliberately producing inferior images that already exist in better quality elsewhere. "He was probably engaging in that bizarre unconscious state again," said Medical Officer Trill, a Lumini whose body glowed with bioluminescent patterns. The light show intensified when she was excited, which made her terrible at poker. Wasteful, but apparently necessary for their neural function. "It's called sleep. And yes, we need it," Jack said, dropping into his chair. "Not all of us can photosynthesize our energy needs, Trill." The 4th member of their unit, Security Specialist Krex, made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was hard to tell with Varixians, whose stone-like exterior and deep-set crystalline eyes made them nearly impossible to read. Krex was built like a walking tank, with natural armor that could withstand direct energy weapon hits. He was also, ironically, the gentlest member of the team, collecting delicate crystal sculptures and writing what he swore was poetry, but sounded to Jack like someone describing geological processes in excruciating detail. "The human uses humor as a defense mechanism again," observed the final team member, Intelligence Analyst Ziri. The empathian floated slightly above her chair, her translucent body rippling with the emotions she absorbed from those around her. "I sense anxiety beneath the surface amusement." "You're saying so?" "Can you not psychoanalyze me before I've had my coffee?" Jack grumbled, reaching for the dispenser. The machine hummed and produced a steaming cup of something that was almost, but not quite, entirely unlike coffee. Jack had learned to accept it. "Still don't understand why your species requires bitter bean water for optimal function," Plex said without looking up from his display. The Commander Ziv's throat sac expanded, the universal sign that he was about to bring the room to order. "Enough chatter. We have a situation." As if on cue, the lights dimmed. and a holographic display materialized in the center of the room. It showed a remote outpost on what appeared to be an asteroid or small moon. Jack leaned forward, studying the image as Ziv began the briefing. What no one in the room acknowledged, what had become something of an unspoken rule in their unit, was the peculiar fact that despite Jack being physically weaker than everyone else, despite humans being newcomers to the galactic stage, despite all the jokes about primitive Earth and its backwards technology, whenever trouble hit, every single member of this elite team inevitably ended up cowering behind Lieutenant Jack Morrison. It had started during their first mission together, when a supposedly routine diplomatic escort had turned into an ambush. To everyone's surprise, most of all Jack's, the human had charged forward, while his supposedly more advanced teammates had hesitated. By the third mission, it had become a pattern. By the 10th, it was just accepted. None of them could explain it. Jack certainly couldn't. But somehow, when things went sideways, the only human in the unit was the one everyone hid behind. Outpost Sigma 12. Commander Ziv said, his clawed finger pointing at the hologram. Established 14 standard months ago on the outer rim of the Viridian system as a research station, primary function, studying gravitational anomalies in the sector. The hologram shifted, showing a sleek facility built into the cratered surface of a dark asteroid. Jack could make out landing pad sensor arrays and the distinctive dome of a shield generator. Impressive for a backwater research post, Jack noted. What were they really studying? Ziv's scales rippled in what might have been appreciation. Your human paranoia serves you well, Lieutenant. Official records indicate gravitational research. Intelligence suggests experimental weapons technology. Ziri floated closer to the display, her translucent form rippling with concern. Communication ceased 48 hours ago. Last transmission was fragmented, only captured partial data. With a gesture from Plex, the hologram changed to an audio visualization. A distorted voice crackled through the speakers. Don't understand how it's co-8 Not possible according to Casey. Breaking through the Casey. God help us. It's the transmission ended in static. Cheerful, Jack muttered. Remaining station personnel, 12 researchers, 6 security officers, and maintenance staff, continued Ziv. Our mission is to determine what happened and secure any sensitive technology or data. Krex's crystalline eyes gleamed. Rescue mission? If possible, Ziv replied, his tone making it clear he didn't consider it likely. What do we know about the threat? Jack asked, already mentally cataloguing the equipment they might need. Unknown, said Ziri, her form pulsing with darker colors. But rumors among the shipping lanes speak of strange occurrences in that sector, of vessels reporting time distortions, crews experiencing shared hallucinations. 3 commercial ships have gone missing in the past month. Oh good, so we're walking into a potential time-bending hallucination party, Jack said. Any other cheerful details? Plex's tentacles danced over his console. Station's automated systems still functional. Environmental controls online. No signs of explosive decompression or catastrophic failure. Power levels nominal. So whatever happened didn't physically destroy the station, Jack said. That's something at least. We depart in 1 hour, Ziv announced. Prepare accordingly. As the team dispersed to gather equipment, Jack found himself walking alongside Krex down the corridor to the armory. So, walking into an unknown danger with minimal intel, Jack said conversationally. Just another Tuesday. Krex's gravelly voice rumbled from somewhere deep in his mineral-based body. You seem pleased by this prospect. Not pleased. Just I don't know. Sometimes I think I was wired wrong. The more dangerous something sounds, the calmer I get. This is why we Krex began, then stopped. Why you what? Jack prompted. Nothing of consequence, the Vorixian replied stiffly. In the armory, the team was selecting weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. Trill was packing advanced medical supplies, including regeneration gel and neural stabilizers. Plex had already strapped on a harness bristling with tech tools and diagnostic equipment. What are you taking, Morrison? Ziri asked, floating nearby as Jack considered the weapon rack. Standard plasma rifle, backup sidearm, Jack said, selecting his weapons, multi-tool, emergency rations, basic survival gear. No advanced neural shielding? No PSI barriers? Plex asked, 6 tentacles simultaneously attaching various high-tech gadgets to his utility belt. Jack shrugged. I'll stick with what I know works. Primitive approach. Plex muttered. Typical human. Sometimes primitive works best, Jack replied with a grin. When your fancy tech fails, I'll still have a knife and a bad attitude. As they continued their preparations, Jack couldn't help but notice the others casting occasional glances his way. There was something in those looks, expectation, perhaps, or a strange sort of faith. It made him uncomfortable. This unspoken agreement that somehow the human would figure it out if things went bad. An hour later, they were aboard their sleek IPF vessel, the Harbinger, breaking away from Harmony Point's docking ring. Jack sat in the co-pilot's seat beside Ziv, watching as the massive space station receded behind them. Time to jump? Jack asked. Calculating optimal approach vector, Ziv replied, his scaled fingers dancing over the controls. Engaging FTL drive in 3, 2, 1. The stars stretched into lines, and they were gone. The Harbinger reverted to normal space with a shudder that Jack felt in his teeth. Outpost Sigma-12 hung before them, a dark silhouette against the distant red dwarf star of the Viridian system. Life signs? Ziv demanded. Plex's tentacles worked multiple consoles simultaneously. Inconclusive. Something's interfering with our scanners. Visual inspection shows no external damage, Ziri noted, her translucent form pulsing with cautious colors. Docking bay doors are open. That's not concerning at all, Jack muttered, checking his plasma rifle for the 3rd time. Defensive systems? Krex asked, his crystalline eyes fixed on the tactical display. Offline, Plex replied. Either powered down or disabled. Commander Xiv's throat sac expanded slightly. We proceed as planned. Dock and secure the station section by section. Morrison, you and Krex take point. Plex, stay with the ship until we confirm it's safe. I like the part where I'm put in front of the unknown danger, Jack said, despite already being on his feet and heading toward the airlock. The docking procedure went smoothly, too smoothly, Jack thought. The Harbinger slid into the open bay as if invited, its automated systems connecting with the stations with no resistance. Atmosphere reads as nominal, Trill reported, consulting her medical scanner. The gravity at standard. No detectable toxins or pathogens. So whatever happened didn't involve poisoning the air, Jack said, but that narrows it down to only about 1 million other ways to kill a station full of people. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Beyond it stretched a dimly lit corridor, emergency lighting casting everything in an eerie red glow. Power seems to be in conservation mode, Plex observed through their comms. Main systems are running, but non-essentials have been powered down. By the system or by survivors. Jack wondered aloud. Krex took position beside Jack, his massive stone-like form making Jack feel distinctly unimpressive by comparison. Movement ahead. The Vorixian rumbled softly. Jack raised his rifle, squinting down the corridor. I don't see anything. General-based vision. Krex reminded him. I perceive different wavelengths. Before Jack could respond, a shadow detached itself from the wall and surged toward them. It moved like liquid darkness, flowing rather than walking. A contact. Jack called, firing his plasma rifle. The bolt passed through the shape with no visible effect. Krex unleashed a barrage from his heavy weapon, each shot powerful enough to punch through the station's hull. The entity seemed to absorb the energy, growing darker and more substantial with each hit. Weapons ineffective, Krex reported, his voice remarkably calm for someone facing an unknown enemy immune to his firepower. Ziri, analysis. Ziv demanded over the comm. The empathian's voice was strained. I sense hunger. Curiosity. It's tasting us. That's not creepy at all, Jack muttered, backing up slowly. A new plan. Everybody back to the ship. The shadow creature surged forward again, this time splitting into multiple tendrils that reached toward them. One brushed against Trill's arm, and the Lumini screamed, her bioluminescence flaring wildly. Trill's hit. Jack shouted, grabbing her and pulling her back. My neural patterns, it's accessing Trill's glow pulsed chaotically. It feeds on information. Jack's mind raced. An information predator? That was a new one. Plex, shut down all our tech. Now, he ordered. That would leave us. Plex began. Do it. Jack cut him off. If it feeds on information, let's starve it. Plex must have complied because suddenly all their equipment went dead. Jack's rifle powered down, their communication devices fell silent, and even the lights on their suits winked out. In the sudden darkness, illuminated only by the station's emergency lighting and Trill's erratic glow, the shadow creature seemed momentarily confused. Jack reached into his boot and pulled out something none of his teammates had seen before, a completely manual, non-electronic knife with a fixed blade. Sometimes primitive works best, he said, stepping forward while the others instinctively moved behind him. The shadow creature hovered, tendrils waving as if trying to sense the technology it fed on. Finding none, it drew back slightly. It's retreating, Ziri whispered. No, Jack said, watching its movements. It's reassessing. Trying to figure out what we are now that we're not broadcasting information. As if to prove his point, the creature surged forward again, this time aiming directly for Jack. Instead of backing away, Jack lunged forward, slashing with his knife. The blade met resistance which surprised him as much as anyone, and the creature emitted a high-pitched sound that made everyone wince. It's solid when it attacks, Jack realized aloud. Plex, I need a light. Just a light, nothing else. A small chemical light stick asked through the air. Jack caught it and immediately used it to track the creature's movements. The shadow recoiled from the direct light, its form becoming more defined. It doesn't like being seen, Jack said. Krex, break open more of those light sticks. Surround it. Beso. The Vorixian moved with surprising speed for a being made of living stone, cracking chemical lights and placing them in a circle around the creature. Trapped in the illumination, the shadow being's form solidified further, revealing a vaguely humanoid shape with too many limbs. What now? Steve demanded. We cannot remain in technological darkness indefinitely. Jack studied the trapped creature. It feeds on information, but only electronic information. It couldn't process my knife. He looked back at his team. We need to contain it, but none of our containment tech will work if it can feed on the systems. There is the zero chamber, Trill suggested, her glow stabilizing somewhat, designed for complete isolation experiments. No electronic signals in or out. Perfect, Jack said. Now we just need to herd a shadow into a box. Easy. Easy. After containing the shadow creature in Sigma 12's zero chamber, a process that involved much cursing, one singed eyebrow Jack's and Krex's discovery that yes, creatures of living darkness could indeed be physically picked up and carried if one was strong enough. The team regrouped in what appeared to be the station's main research lab. I've accessed the station logs, Plex announced, his tentacles dancing over a terminal. Last entries suggest they were studying what they called information density waves in this sector. Apparently there's a natural phenomenon here where data itself becomes semi-physical. And they decided to capture it? Jack asked incredulously. Did they also try to bottle lightning and pet supernovas in their spare time? The creature we encountered appears to be just one manifestation, Ziri said, her form rippling with concern. According to these notes, they detected multiple entities. Where are the station personnel? Siv demanded. Plex's tentacles hesitated over the controls. Security feeds show them barricaded in the residential section. Life signs are unusual. Define unusual, Jack said, not really wanting to hear the answer. Their neural patterns are synchronized, all of them. Completely identical brain activity. A heavy silence fell over the team. Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. So they're what? Mind melded? Possessed? Jack asked. Unknown, Plex replied. But the pattern matches the frequency of the information density waves they were studying. They'd been absorbed into some kind of hive mind, Trill concluded, her luminescence dimming with worry. Fascinating from a neurological perspective, but deeply troubling. Can we reverse it? Ziv asked. Not with our current understanding, Trill admitted. We would need to. A sudden bang echoed through the station, followed by the wail of emergency sirens. What now? Jack groaned. Containment breach in zero chamber, Plex reported, his tentacles moving frantically. And multiple new entities detected throughout the station. They're coming from the residential section. The crew, Ziri whispered. They've become conduits. Another alarm joined the first, this one higher pitched and more urgent. What's that? Jack demanded. Station self-destruct, Plex said, his normally impassive voice tinged with alarm, activated remotely. Countdown, 15 minutes. Override it. Ziv ordered. I cannot, Plex replied. The command came from within the information network itself. It's as if the network is conscious and has decided to destroy the station. Can we evacuate? Krex asked, already moving toward the door. Negative, Plex said. Docking clamps have locked our ship in place. Annual override would take at least 20 minutes. Jack watched as his teammates, beings from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, each with abilities and technologies humans could barely comprehend, all turned to look at him. Their expressions ranged from Ziv's scaled stoicism to Ziri's translucent hope, but the message was clear. What's the plan, human? Why are you all looking at me? Jack demanded. I'm the primitive one, remember? You're the advanced species. Your species has survived multiple near extinctions, Ziv stated matter-of-factly. Humans specialize in improbable survival. You think differently, Trill added, outside expected parameters. Also, Krex rumbled, you are surprisingly difficult to kill. Jack ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Fine. Let me think. The information entities were multiplying. The station was set to explode. They couldn't escape. Everything connected to the station's systems was compromised. Jack paced back and forth, muttering to himself. Wait, he said suddenly, stopping. Plex, you said the entities are information density waves that became semi-physical, right? Correct. The Kwani confirmed. And they feed on information electronic signals, neural patterns, data streams. Also correct. Jack's eyes lit up. What happens to a wave when you introduce a cancelling wave? Destructive interference. You propose creating a counterwave? Plex's tentacles curled in what Jack had learned was a gesture of doubt the computational requirements would be. No, Jack interrupted. Not a computed wave, a natural one. What's the opposite of information? Ignorance, Ziri suggested. Noise, Jack said. Pure, random, meaningless noise. These entities feed on ordered information. What if we flood the station with the informational equivalent of static? That could work, Plex admitted, his tentacles straightening in surprise, but generating sufficient noise across all frequencies. What about the station's emergency systems? Jack suggested. Can we reconfigure them to broadcast random data instead of coherent signals? For the next frantic minutes, they worked to implement Jack's plan. Plex rewrote emergency protocols while Trill prepared a neural dampening field to protect them from the effects. Krex and Ziv moved to secure their escape route, physically barricading doors to slow the approaching entities. Ready, Plex announced. But I must warn you, this will affect all information-based systems, including life support, gravity control, and... Just do it, Jack said. Plex activated the modified emergency broadcast. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, every screen on the station began displaying random patterns. The lights flickered chaotically. The air filled with bursts of static from every speaker. Even Jack's vision seemed affected, the edges blurring as the random data overwhelmed sensory processing. It's working. Ziri called out, pointing at a shadow entity that had just entered the lab. The creature was convulsing, its form losing cohesion. They cannot process the noise. Time to move, Jack ordered. Krex, get that door open. Ziv, you're with me. Trill, keep that neural dampening field up, or we'll be as scrambled as they are. As they fought their way back to the Harbinger, Jack noticed something odd. Despite the plan being his idea, despite his inspirational leadership moment, his teammates had once again arranged themselves in a formation where he was somehow at the front. The most vulnerable member of the team, supposedly protected by the others, had once again become the shield. It would have been amusing if they weren't all about to die. The corridor leading to the docking bay was a nightmare of flickering lights and distorted gravity. The station's systems, overwhelmed by the random data flood, were failing in spectacular fashion. Jack stumbled forward, his inner ear struggling to make sense of which way was up as gravity shifted unpredictably. 8 minutes until detonation, Plex announced, his voice strained. The Kwani was clearly struggling to maintain his composure as the information chaos affected his highly ordered mind. Almost there, Jack called back, though there had become a relative concept in the disorienting environment. They rounded a corner to find the docking bay doors sealed shut. Beyond the reinforced viewport, they could see the Harbinger still locked in place. Plex, override, Zeev demanded. Impossible, Plex replied, his tentacles drooping. The door system is completely corrupted by noise. Manual override? Jack asked, looking for a physical control. There, Krex pointed to a panel on the wall, but it requires constant pressure on 2 separate controls. Engineering safety protocol. Jack moved to the panel, examining it. 2 controls, 10 meters apart. Perfect. I will operate one, Krex offered, moving to the far control. No, Jack said. Get everyone to the ship and start the pre-launch sequence. I'll hold these controls. But how will you? Trill began. I'll figure it out, Jack interrupted. Go. As Krex managed to force the first door open, Jack saw movement behind them. A seething mass of shadow entities was gathering at the far end of the corridor, drawn by their presence despite the chaos of random data. Our company, Jack warned, nodding toward the approaching darkness. What happened next would later be described in 5 different ways in 5 different after-action reports. Ziv would call it tactical repositioning. Plex would term it logical protection of essential personnel. Trill would describe it as instinctual response to threat. Ziri would simply say emotional certainty. Krex would not mention it at all. What actually happened was that all 4 of Jack's alien teammates, representing some of the most physically powerful and technologically advanced species in the galaxy, simultaneously moved to position themselves behind the lone human. Are you kidding me? Jack exclaimed, as Exiv's massive scaled form crowded behind his left shoulder and Trill's glowing presence huddled behind his right. Now? You're doing this now? Hold position, Ziv ordered, as if he hadn't just used Jack as a human shield. The shadow entities surged forward, their forms rippling with what might have been anger or hunger. Jack raised his rifle, knowing it would have minimal effect. Ideas, anyone? He asked, not really expecting an answer. The noise isn't stopping them anymore, Plex observed from his position safely behind Jack's back. They're adapting. The lead entity stretched forward, forming a tendril that reached toward Jack's face. Without thinking, Jack swatted it away with his rifle. To his surprise, his hand passed through it, but the rifle didn't. The entity recoiled. Wait, Jack said, staring at his weapon. They're not adapting to the noise. They're evolving. Becoming more physical. And this is good news? Trill asked nervously. Jack grinned. It is if they're physical enough to hurt. He fired his rifle directly at the nearest entity. This time, instead of passing through, the energy bolt struck something solid. The creature shuddered, its form destabilizing. Hit them with everything. Jack ordered. They're solid enough to damage now. For the next 2 minutes, the corridor became a storm of weapons fire as the team unloaded everything they had at the advancing shadows. Krex's heavy weapon tore chunks from the entities. Zeev's dual plasma pistols lanced through their suddenly vulnerable forms. Even Trill contributed, her medical equipment repurposed to emit harmful radiation bursts. But there were too many, and they were learning fast. One managed to slip past their defenses, wrapping itself around Plex's leftmost tentacle. The Kwani screeched in pain. "Plex!" Jack shouted, spinning to help his teammate. In that moment of distraction, another entity struck, flowing over Jack like living darkness. He felt it trying to connect with his mind, rifling through his thoughts like fingers through files. "Get off me," Jack growled, dropping to the floor and rolling. The physical contact seemed to confuse the entity, which was clearly more accustomed to digital interfaces than wrestling matches. Jack's mind raced as the creature tried to process his neural patterns. Unlike his teammates, whose brains operated along strictly logical pathways, human cognition was a chaotic mess of contradictions, emotions, and illogical leaps. Jack could almost feel the entity's confusion as it encountered concepts like gut feeling and intuition. "You want information?" Jack gasped, still struggling. "Try processing this." He began reciting, of all things, the lyrics to "Never Gonna Give You Up," while simultaneously visualizing his grandmother's apple pie recipe and calculating prime numbers. The cognitive dissonance of deliberately thinking contradictory thoughts seemed to overwhelm the entity. It spasmed and loosened its grip. "They can't process human thought patterns," Jack called out, breaking free. "Our brains are too chaotic for them." "Of course," Trill said, her glow pulsing with realization. "Human neural structures evolve differently. You have emotional and logical centers integrated in ways our species separated millions of years ago." "Everybody think human thoughts," Jack ordered, then realized how absurd that sounded. "I mean be illogical. Contradictory, make no sense." "Impossible," Plex stated flatly. "Try," Jack insisted, firing his rifle at another approaching entity. "Say, Zeev, what's your favorite color?" "Irrelevant to our current," the commander began. "Exactly." Jack cut him off. "That's your problem. Answer the damn question." "Blue," Zeev said after a moment, looking confused even as he continued firing. "Why?" Jack pressed, backing toward the door controls. "I don't know. It's pleasant?" "Good. Krex, what's the worst poem you've ever written?" The Vorixian actually looked offended. "My compositions are all of equal quality." "Lie to yourself," Jack shouted. "Pick one you hate." As his teammates struggled with the concept of subjective preferences and emotional reactions, Jack noticed the shadow entities becoming less coordinated. Their movements grew erratic, their forms less stable. "It's working," Ziri called out, her translucent form rippling with excitement. "Their shared network is destabilizing." 5 minutes to detonation, Plex reminded them, his tentacles working furiously to bypass the docking clamps. Jack reached the door controls and activated them. The massive doors began to slide open, revealing the harbinger beyond. "Everyone through," he ordered. "I'll hold them off." His teammates hesitated before moving toward the opening. Jack fired continuously, keeping the shadow entities at bay as the team escaped to the ship. Engines primed. Zeev reported over the comm, docking clamps still engaged. "Working on it," Jack replied, eyeing the distance to the ship. The doors were fully open now, but he needed to keep the controls engaged. The moment he let go, they would begin to close. The shadow entities were regrouping, forming a larger, more consolidated shape that loomed over Jack. He fired until his rifle overheated, then drew his sidearm. 3 minutes, came Plex's voice. Jack made a decision. He wedged his sidearm into one control panel, jamming it open, then sprinted for the ship, hoping the door would stay open long enough. Behind him, the shadow entity surged forward, moving faster than before. Jack felt it brush against his heel as he leapt through the Harbinger's airlock. The door slammed shut a fraction of a second later. "Go," he yelled, even as he hit the deck. Docking clamps still. Plex began. Override rejected. Ziv confirmed. Jack dragged himself to his feet. Then we break them. Full reverse thrust. Yes. That could damage, Plex protested. 2 minutes. Jack shouted. Do it. The Harbinger's engines roared to life, straining against the clamps. Metal screamed as immense forces pulled against the station's restraints. Structural failure imminent, Krex reported, his crystalline eyes fixed on the sensor readings. More power, Jack ordered. Give it everything. With a final metallic shriek, the clamps gave way. The Harbinger surged backward, tumbling away from the station. Jack was thrown against the bulkhead, his head striking the metal with enough force to see stars. 1 minute, Plex announced. Calculating escape vector. Jack pulled himself into a seat as Ziv worked the controls. The station was receding rapidly, but not fast enough. We'll still be in the blast radius, Ziri said, her form paling with fear. Fail jump? Jack suggested. Too close to the gravity well. Plex replied. Calculations would take. No calculations, Jack interrupted. Just jump. That's suicide. Plex protested. 30 seconds, Trill reported. Jack locked eyes with Ziv. Your call, Commander. The Draconian hesitated only a moment before his scaled hand slammed down on the FTL control. A brace for emergency jump. The stars stretched, the universe twisted, and everything went white. Jack awoke in the Harbinger's medical bay, which was his first clue that he wasn't dead. His second clue was the throbbing pain in his head, which seemed excessive for the afterlife. The human regains consciousness, Trill observed, her luminescent form hovering nearby. Remarkable recovery time, considering what? Jack croaked, his throat dry. Considering you should be dead, came Zai's gravelly voice from the doorway. The commander stood with his arms crossed, scales shifting from blue to green in what Jack had learned indicated respect. Jack tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. The station? Destroyed, Ziv confirmed, along with the information entities. And us. Where are we? Approximately 3 light years from where we should be, Plex answered, entering the medical bay with Krex and Ziri in tow. The blind jumped through us off course, but remarkably, not into a star or black hole. The statistical improbability is… Let me guess, Jack interrupted with a weak smile. It's another example of human luck. I have studied your species' history, Ziri said, floating closer. You call it flying by the seat of your pants. An odd expression, but apt. Jack laughed, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through his ribs. What happened after I lost consciousness? Krex stepped forward, mandibles clicking excitedly. Your override code worked. The emergency protocols engaged just as the station's self-destruct sequence reached critical. We had approximately 3.2 seconds to initiate the jump drive, which Plex managed. Ziv added with a nod toward the engineer, though not without some creativity. Plex's tendrils coiled in what Jack recognized as embarrassment. I had to bypass several safety protocols. The drive will require extensive repairs. But we're alive, Jack said, looking around at his alien crewmates, all of us. Yes, Trill confirmed, her glow pulsing softly. Though your actions were highly illogical, the probability of success was. Sometimes, Jack interrupted, humans don't calculate the odds, we just hope. A moment of silence followed, broken by Ziv's deep rumble. The Council has requested a full report. They are particularly interested in your hope. Jack managed to sit up fully this time, grimacing through the pain. And what will you tell them, Commander? Ziv's scales rippled with colors Jack had never seen before. That perhaps we have underestimated your species. The initiative's evaluation metrics may need reconsideration. Does this mean Earth will join the Galactic Alliance? Jack asked, hardly daring to believe it. That decision lies with the Council, Ziri interjected, her crystalline structure catching the light. But I would say your demonstration of both your technological adaptability and your unique problem-solving approach has made a compelling case. Trill floated closer to Jack. I have a query. When you overrode the station's systems, knowing the risk to yourself, was this what humans call sacrifice? Jack thought for a moment. We call it doing what's necessary. For the crew. For friends. Friends. Zave repeated the word carefully, as if testing its weight. A concept many species share, despite our differences. Krex chittered softly. The medical scans indicate you will make a full recovery, Jack Harrison. Which is fortunate, as I have 217 more questions about human idioms. The room filled with various forms of alien laughter, and Jack found himself joining in despite the pain. 6 months ago, he had been a shuttle pilot on Earth, unsure of his place in the universe. Now, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, he felt a sense of belonging he'd never expected. So, he said finally, where to next? Zave's scales settled into a deep blue. The stars await, Lieutenant Harrison. And it seems your species may have a place among them after all. As the Harbinger's engines hummed to life, carrying them deeper into uncharted space, Jack couldn't help but think that sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't found in distant stars or alien technologies, but in the connections formed across the vast differences that initially seemed impossible to bridge.